Hello, good morning. I hope your your Christmas, New Year break was good. I hope you're rested, and I hope you've been enjoying reading the books that I set you to read for the literature course. Okay, I'm going to share my screen now for today's session. Okay, so as normal, please pause whenever you need to for the class to do all the work, and I will send the video and the PowerPoint afterwards for you to go back over anything that you want to look at again. Okay, so first, I promised you a short test, and this is a test. It will only take 5 minutes. Here on this first slide is your test. 7 statements. You need to write true or false for each statement. Okay, I'll pause and you have 5 minutes to think about these. Are they true or false? Okay, pause now. Okay. What do you think? Do you agree? Can you compare your answers with each other? Okay, all of them are true, of course. These are some of the points that we've been looking at in the first few literature sessions. We're going to get more complicated and more complex as we go on from today's session. So they're all true. And now we're going to look at the Malala and Greta books that you read in the holidays. I hope everyone managed to read at least one. We're going to be discussing them today. And if you can sit with someone who read the other one, then at least you'll feel that you know something about the one that you didn't read. And of course, you can read them later too. Okay. We'll start with Malala. Here are 5 questions. I want you to pause the video and discuss in groups of 2 or 3. Message, characters, plot, style, and audience. Okay, pause now. Okay, we'll look at my ideas in a minute, but first I just want to show you a summary of the story for people who didn't read it. So here we have 2 slides of the summary of Malala's story. So pause and read silently, please. And we've got another slide in a minute. Okay, ready for the next second slide? Here. Pause while you read. Okay, is there any vocabulary that you don't understand or any points in this that you don't understand? If so, pause while you look up the vocabulary, or you can explain to each other any of the situations. Okay, so back to these questions. If you want to discuss them again, you can, and pause. Or we can go on to my ideas for the answers. I think the message is don't accept what's not fair. And even young girls can fight and make changes. Do you agree? There are several characters. There is Malala herself. Her father is important, her brothers, her friends, the politicians, the Taliban. And the plot is the storyline. It's her life story up until she was shot and taken to the UK. It's a very simple style. It's accessible, which means it's not too difficult to read for everybody to have access to. It's quite straightforward and logical, not too poetical or literary. And the audience is a very important part of the looking at the literature. Who is the audience? Who is it written for? And I think this is written for everyone, for as many people as possible. She wanted to get her message across to many, many, many people in all countries of the world, all ages, all genders, all religions. I think the audience is everyone. Do you agree? If you don't agree with me, you're welcome to disagree. Maybe put that in the literature WhatsApp group. Okay, let's move on. So what do these words mean? Can you pause and try to explain to each other or look them up in a dictionary or on your phone? Pause for a few minutes now. Okay, do you know any of these words? We need to use these words when we're talking about different ideas in literature. So let's have a look at some of them in context. So I'm using these words now to talk about the Malala book. The genre is it's a French word. Genre is the type of writing. So the genre could be poetry, it could be romantic literature, it could be political literature. This genre of Malala is a memoir. So it's like an autobiography. The setting and the context, it's where the story takes place. And the setting is the Swat Valley in Pakistan, and the years is 97 to 2013. The narrator is the person who's telling the story, and you can have a first person narrator, I, or a third person narrator who's saying he, she. So this is a first person narrator. It's narrated by Malala herself. She's narrating it in the first person past tense, and that's her point of view, obviously. The tone and the mood, it's about, is it positive? Is it negative? Is it dangerous? So it's the tone and the mood are happy at first, light-hearted, and the tone becomes darker when the Taliban arrive and more urgent. Okay, so different tones in different parts of the book. The protagonist and the antagonist. The protagonist is the person who initiates the action, the main person who the book is about, and the antagonist is someone who is against her. So the protagonist, the main character, is Malala, and the Taliban, the whole group of oppressive Islamic fundamentalist organization, is the antagonist. They are against her. Often in stories, we have a protagonist and an antagonist, and the protagonist is fighting against the antagonist. Conflict is very common in literature, and there's lots of conflict in this book. The Taliban's occupation, going to school, standing up against the Taliban. You can pause to look through this again if you need to. Now move on. And we have more features of literature. 4 here. How effective do you think they are? So pause now to discuss these 4 features of literature. Okay. So the flashback is when she goes back to the past for the introduction to talk about the terrible day when she was shot, flashback, and then go back to her happy childhood. Repetition plays quite a big role. She's repeating same things over and over sometimes. It's a first person narrative, so it's very personal. And all the details, the geographical, historical, political details add to the effectiveness, I think, because they make you feel how true it is. And we learn about it as well. Okay, so here is another feature. Here are 5 example sentences. Do you know what this feature of literature is? Pause and discuss. Read them and discuss. Okay. Do you know what they are? These are similes. Simile. So a simile compares something using the word like or as. So the Malala book contains quite a lot of similes, and this is one of the important features of literature that we can analyze. Another feature is irony. Now, irony is where you say one thing, but you do the opposite. And we often come across irony in literature. There are three main types of irony in I Am Malala. We have the dramatic irony, the situational irony, and another situational irony. Read through this now, pause and read through and discuss the irony and how effective that is in the book. Okay, so it is quite ironic that she is the one who speaks, but her father is the one targeted by the Taliban, and then it's Malala who they tried to kill. Because the father speaks out more against the Taliban in the first place. The second one, a stutter, is when you speak with difficulty, when you say, I can stutter. He has a stutter, but he devotes his life to public speaking. It's quite ironic. And the other one, that most people believe that Islam is peaceful, respecting women and encouraging tolerance and acceptance, but it's ironic that this fighting in the name of Islam goes against these accepted Islamic values. So the use of irony is important. Okay, we've got a practical task now. Here are some really interesting quotes from the Malala book. Can you pause the screen and report in reported speech some of these quotes? Pause for 10 minutes and report in pairs. Okay. Okay, these are really important, aren't they? All these quotes. Let's have a look and compare yours to mine. Remember, no comma after that. No speech marks or inverted commas in reported speech. I've used a variety of different types of reported speech: state, tell, conclude, ask, suggest, and write. You can pause now to compare these with your own reported quotes. Okay, so let's move on to Greta's book. So first thing, can you, in twos or threes, can you get together with other people and discuss? Did you enjoy it? Can you report some things that Greta said? Pause for a few minutes now. Okay. So the first thing is a summary. I've got on the next slide, I've got a summary of Greta's book, but you need to add 3 words. And the 3 words you need to add in the gaps are flyers, which are the bits of paper that you give out with important information on, arguments, and activists, people who are fighting to change, to make a difference. Okay, are you ready? Here is the summary. There are 3 gaps, 1, 2, and 3. I want you to pause the screen and decide where to put the 3 gaps, the 3 words: flyers, arguments, and activists. Pause now. Okay. Did you manage to put the words in? This is a very good way of getting students to read, because you've got a purpose. You've got to understand what you're reading in order to put the missing words in the gaps. So it's a very good strategy for teachers to check. So which are the words then? Number 1 is other climate activists. Number 2, when she handed out flyers, the bits of paper with information. And number 3 is to back up her arguments, support her different arguments. So this is a summary of her book, which is a collection of her speeches against climate change. Okay, so all these words we looked at before in the context of Malala, I want you now to discuss, maybe in groups of 3, maybe with at least one person who read Greta's book, discuss what are the genre, setting or context, narrator point of view, tone, mood, protagonist, antagonist, major conflicts, climax, paradox, and personification. Pause now and discuss for maybe 10 minutes. Okay, let's have a look. So the genre, it was a speeches. The setting and context are speeches as well. It was written in the context of climate change, and the narrator, she's not really narrating, she's giving her own opinions. It's an educative tone and an optimistic mood. She, Greta, is the protagonist, and the antagonists against her are the politicians or all the adults of the world who are doing nothing. The conflict is the strike and protests. Climax, when she gets a big audience and talks in the United Nations and other important places. The paradox, this is interesting because you think one thing, but it says another thing. You understand a different thing. The main paradox is the hypocrisy of developed countries. So developed countries like the UK, they say they are doing something, but actually they are not. They are the worst polluters. This is a paradox, and it's satire. Western countries are in the front line talking about climate change, but they are the lead environmental polluters, which means they pollute more than everyone else. Personification, and this is making something into a person. So global warming is made into a person, like a monstrous being that is about to destroy humanity if we don't stop it. Personification and paradox are 2 more features of literature. Okay, can you match these? These are some metaphors and similes. They are ways of comparing things, and here are 4 really good, strong metaphors and similes in the Greta book. Can you pause and match the letters, the metaphors and similes, with the descriptions? Okay. Here are the answers. This is giving more information about them. And these are very interesting ways of comparing with metaphors and similes. Now I want you to report these quotes from Greta. So in pairs or groups, pause for maybe 10 minutes and try to write reported speech with these key quotes from Greta. Pause now. Okay, so here are my suggestions. Again, using different types of verbs. Suggest, agree, explain, instruct, accuse. These are really good verbs because it varies the said and told. You can pause now to read these and compare if you want to. This is another way of analysing persuasive texts. Logos, pathos, and ethos. These are three different Greek words. And the logos is the logic, the reason to persuade people with statistics and comparisons. The pathos is the human emotions and values, personal stories. And the ethos is the trust and credibility. And I think both Malala and Greta's persuasive books, they all have logos, pathos, and ethos. They have the statistics to prove they are correct. They have the human emotions and stories, and they have the trust with expert credibility. There are other persuasive speeches, of course, that we know. A persuasive speech is also called rhetoric, another key term. Martin Luther King's speech, I Have a Dream, for example. Most politicians' speeches are persuasive. Most advertising is persuasive. It's trying to get you to buy something. And this persuasion can be direct or the opposite of direct, subtle, when you're not really sure that they're persuading you at all. Okay, we've come across lots of different words and terms in today's lesson. I want you to pause the screen now and explain to your partner what all of these mean. And you can give examples as well if you want to. Pause now. Okay. If you have any problems with the definitions of any of these, you can look back at this lesson again and look at the examples to understand what they mean better. So this is the end of today's lesson. What would you like to persuade other people to do? And what could you write to persuade them? Maybe you could persuade people to read the books by Greta and Malala. Do you need to be important to persuade others? I don't think so, because Greta and Malala were not important when they started. Your homework is either to read the other book that you didn't read, or find some other examples of persuasive literature. You can look in newspapers for political speeches. You can look online. You can look for adverts, for example, and look for these rhetorical devices. All of these types of things: simile, metaphor, conflict, paradox. Okay, this is your homework for the week. That's the end of the lesson. Any comments you'd like to put in the literature WhatsApp group, please put them there. Have a good week. Bye.